The Survivors is brought to you by our friends at Calmary. This podcast mentions suicide, mental illness, grief and loss, and may be triggering for some listeners. So please take care of your mental well-being by pausing or skipping any sections that feel uncomfortable to you. And if you or someone you know is struggling, please call 988 for support. So it's so hard to know where to jump in with my story, right? My story is a little bit unusual. It's a little complicated and it's long, I think. Would you agree that
it is long?
Kind of cookie.
It's long and complicated, but it also makes you who you are.
Right, exactly. And I for sure 1000% would not be here behind this mic with you doing this if I didn't have this story. So I guess like the best place to start is to say that I am a 3-time survivor of suicide loss. I've lost my cousin when I was 9 years old. The year after my cousin passed away in 1978, I lost my father. But that one's the real kind of unusual kind of loss. You'll see in a second when I explain. And then I lost one of our closest childhood friends who, we were close all the way up through our 50s, like lived together in college and, we were in each other's weddings and all that. And so that was only about 4 years ago. So I had nothing whatsoever to do with the mental health field or community most of my life until only a handful of years ago. Like I was writing parenting books. I was in the parenting space. I was, on all the parenting platforms talking about raising kids and work-life balance and all that. And then everything changed. Everything just kind of exploded and imploded. And when the dust settled, I was, somebody very, very different. So for me, I guess the thing that makes the most sense is to explain how I've lost my dad twice in my life. I think that makes the most sense. So I've lost my father twice because I lost him when I was 10 years old. I was at day camp for the day. And when I came home, my mom came to grab me off the school bus, camp bus, and I didn't walk with her to my house. She turned me in the opposite direction and walked me away from our house that had a line of cars down the street in front of it. And I thought, I was just, crazy things you think of when you're 10 years old. I was totally sure that was a surprise party because my 10th birthday was 2 weeks before that day. And I could see like my grandma's car and my Uncle Milton's car and my Aunt Harriet's car, like everybody's cars were there. And I was so sure that it was a party for me. And then my mom gets me off the bus and she walks me in the opposite direction of the house. And I see my aunt's car parked way down the street in like a weird spot, way down the street. And I don't know why, like it just hit me in that moment. It was like 5:00 in the afternoon. My dad would never have been home at that time. So we lived north of Boston and he worked in the city. And I would never have had my dad home at that time of day. He always came home later. But for some weird reason, I said, "Where's Dad? Why isn't Dad here?" And my mom just had her arms around me as we're walking over to my aunt's car. And she said, "Daddy had a heart attack." And my first instinct was, we have to go to him. We have to go to him right now. And she said, we can't go to him. And by now we're sitting in my aunt's car. And she said, Daddy died. Daddy had a heart attack and died. And of course, your whole world just explodes in front of your face. And that was the narrative that I lived with for 35 years of my life. So that happened when I was 10 years old. Always believed my dad, who was a super fit guy. He was a mountain climber and he raced cars and he was super, super active outdoorsman, but he also smoked 3 packs of Winston's a day. So, there was heart disease in the family and all that. So it was not a hard story to believe. I had no reason to disbelieve it. So that's the story that I had my entire life growing up, all the way through high school, college, getting married, having kids. And then very unexpectedly, 35 years later, my dad was 45 when he died. So when I was 45 years old that summer, I accidentally learned that my dad had actually died by suicide. And it just gutted me. It just took me out. It really did for a long time. It's funny. People probably don't know it. People who are in my life, even my closest friends, didn't know, because I was like two very separate people for a very, very long time. Like the outward facing part of me was so different than the person who was like in my bedroom behind closed doors sobbing to Dave for like 3 years. So I've lost him twice, because when I found out it was a suicide and my mom confirmed that it was in fact a suicide, I, it, I lost everything in that moment and went right back to square one. Like I was right back to like day one, minute one of losing my dad all over again, and grieved him. But now I was a suicide loss survivor. And what the hell was I going to do with that? Like, what is that even? I had no I had experience with it only in the context of like my cousin had died by suicide, but I was 9 years old. Nobody talked about it. It was not a thing. So now all of a sudden, here I am like a survivor because my own dad took his life. So that's my why. That just like, I shut down for a long time. I stopped writing, stopped creating content, didn't really feel like I was aligned with what I wanted to do. And my mom, I mean, you've met my mom.
Your mom is a little fireball. I love her.
Oh my God, my mom is like the greatest of the great. She's the queen of all that matters. And she said to me like super early on, she was like, you absolutely can start talking about this or writing about this. Like whatever you need to do with this, more or less is what she said. You do. Go do it. I support you. And I was like, no, my God, there's no way. I'm not going to write about this now. I'm not going to talk about this now. I can't do that. No way. Too painful. Don't know what I'm dealing with. Don't even know how I feel. My kids didn't even know about it. Only at that time, my mom and Dave and I were the only ones who knew about it. Because as soon as I found out about it from my mother, I, of course, my mom was staying with us, and we had gone out for lunch, and the conversation, it just came. And she went back in the house to kind of get her bearings. And I said to Dave, like, I need to take a drive. We need to go take a drive. And he was like, well, he immediately knew something was wrong. He was like, what is going on? And I told him, and I remember the first thing he said was, well, how do you know? Like, could it have been a mistake? Like, you know what I mean? Right. And I said, honey, he left a note. And he was like, oh, shit. Okay. Like, now, okay, like we know now that this is real. What we're dealing with is real. But it was just the two of them were the only ones who knew for years before I felt like I had kind of had my bearings a little bit and could like talk about it. And I wanted first and foremost to talk about it with my kids and say like, look, you guys, there's inherited trauma and there's inherited DNA, and we all have it. And, my kids at that time were like junior high and high school. And I really felt like it was important for them to know, like, okay, there's some serious mental illness on my dad's side of the family. And it may not be impacting you now, but it could impact you at some point in your life. And you need to know about it. And it's important to be able to talk about it and have that dialogue. So kind of once I told them, it was like a little slow domino effect. It was like I told them, I told my immediate family, and started like, widening the circle, and told friends and whatnot. And then all of a sudden it was like, I went from like one day still sticking with that narrative of like, my dad died of a heart attack. It's crazy how many people ask how my dad died. Like, it really bugs my kids that people ask so much, because it's such a personal question, but so many people do. So for the longest time, I still kind of reverted back to the old, my dad died of a heart attack narrative. Then it was like, all of a sudden, once I kind of reconciled with things in my own head, never looked back. I was like, nope, my dad died by suicide, and never looked back. I never felt shame, never felt any shame. I was bullshit though at my father, but probably not for the reasons that you would think. I wasn't angry at my dad for leaving me. I was so upset with my dad for leaving my mom as a single mom with a 10-year-old child, working a part-time job as a secretary at a nursing home. Like, the hell did she know about? Like, at that time, like, my dad took care of everything. And what did she know about raising a child alone, and, bookkeeping and finances and house and mortgage and all the things? And so for a really long time, I was so furious at him for that. And that was also still at the time when I really believed that suicide was a selfish act, which a lot of people believe that. And that's something I want us to talk a lot about.
100%, because it's not selfish. Like,
no.
And just to interject into your story, just remember, like, when your dad committed suicide, the resources that we have today were not available to him at that time.
Right. Oh my God. That's what, I mean, that right there is why I founded the HelpHUB, which I know we're going to talk about at some point later on. And we kind of, mention it in each episode, but that's why I founded this whole platform, to put people with the resources they need, connect people with the resources that they need. That's why I'm on the Crisis Lifelines with the Trevor Project. That's why, I work with the National Alliance on Mental Illness to tell stories about my experience and help mainstream these kinds of experiences with other people. And yeah, it was, so that was my why for kind of diving into, once I unloaded it all on, on the rest of the world, and everybody kind of knew the truth, then it was like, I couldn't stop. You know what I mean? I just and I know you feel the same way, because you're literally doing the same thing. I know we're going to talk about your story next week, but it's no secret that, you're a survivor of an attempt of a few years ago. And that whole experience completely changed the trajectory of your life, in the same way that, learning that my dad died by suicide changed mine. And it's crazy when you think about the things that happen to us in our lives that are these tragic, traumatic, world shaking, shake your foundation to your core kind of things that happen. And then you can turn around and still somehow dig out a nugget of gold in there, or something that's, worth something to other people. That's, you went through shit. You were in it. And now look at you. Now you're inspiring the world to reach out for help and talk about what's on your mind and what's in your heart and all those things. And I've been through it again and again. And, as a survivor of suicide loss, and all I want to do is talk about it. All I want to do is explain to people that you do not have to use that as a way of ending your pain. We can fix it. There is help.
And it's funny, but not funny, how shit that we start doing right after facing things like this, that weren't in our wheelhouse, right? 5 years ago, for me, this was not in the wheelhouse. It was not on the vision board. Okay, I don't even know what a vision board is. It's not my generation. But what we're doing is we're changing the world. And I love that you're so open about your journey, about everything that you do, and you're out there helping people every single day. Your story matters.
I hope so. I really hope so. And it's funny, for people who are listening, you're not going to be able to see me do this, but gee, I did this to you before we even started recording this morning. I told you what I gifted myself for my birthday last year. It was like a little teeny tiny thing, but it has become so powerful for me. In my office, I realized that something was missing on my desk. And so I made, for anyone who's not watching the video of this, I'm holding up a picture of me with my dad. I was probably 7 years old, and it's right here on my desk. It's right there. It's staring me in the face every single time I write an article, or I do an interview, or we tape a podcast, or I write another chapter in a book, or whatever it is. It's right there. And the craziest thing, and I don't even know if I've ever told you this, or maybe I have. At this point, I really genuinely feel like every single thing that I do, whether I'm on a lifeline or talking about my story, I'm doing it with my dad. I have had the most overpowering sensation lately in the last probably 6 months that we are absolutely doing all of this work together.
Take a step to your mental well-being with Calmery, trusted online therapy platform that supports you through life's challenges. Connect with licensed therapists and reap the benefits of traditional therapy enhanced with digital tools whenever you need it. Visit Calmery.com to get started.
I'm sure he's shining down on you every day and sitting with you, right?
Yeah.
He, in his own mind, wishing that he had the resources that we have today.
Yeah.
And that's why podcasts like ours are so incredibly powerful and important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's, we talked about this in the last episode, that, for both of us, the thing we want most, which is where we totally align. You and I align in like 65,000 different things. But the thing that like really brought us together was I've never met anyone who is as passionate as I believe myself to be about making an impact in the world, about changing the conversation, about changing the narrative, about bringing the hard topics and conversations into the spotlight and the mainstream until I met you. And
because they've been taboo for so long, right? And I think, for people that are my age, that have been told not to talk about it, that it's important that we have these conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have it, and not have it be like generational. I mean, what we're going through or what we're talking about, and suicide happens in every single generation, every single age group.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, I think about my dad. In his case, nobody knew. Nobody had any idea that my dad was struggling. I mean, my mom certainly didn't. I mean, if my father was in the room now, the way he was then, you would have seen the most lovable, charming, funny, grounded, present, joyful man. I mean, that's why sometimes it's when I really think about like what he must have been going through, it, just kind of makes me want to cry, because I realize that he was suffering. Like, I mean, when you're at that point and you do that thing, you are suffering in a way that most people do not understand. You understand it, but a lot of other people don't. And, he just took that one last step that fortunately you didn't take. And there was I mean, it was 1978. Like, who the hell was he talking to about his feelings? He certainly wasn't talking to his family. He certainly wasn't talking to his friends. I mean, the ironic thing is that at the very, very end of his life, I think my mom says it's like the last month or so, he did actually say to her that he was seeing a therapist. But I think it was just like too little, too late, or the wrong person, and whatever the reason was, it didn't work. And I think it was just too late. But that's all I want to do now is, when I'm not on the lifelines, all I'm thinking about is being on the lifelines, to be the person on the other end of the phone that my dad didn't have, or to, I just submitted the manuscript for my next book that I've been working on for like 4 years. That's the story of losing my dad twice and losing him to suicide. And I think about all these things. It's like, I can't do enough. Like, I just want to, and I know you're exactly the same way. That's why you were like, oh, sure, I'll jump from doing this wildly successful other podcast to let's do a podcast together. I was like,
so I
lost your mind.
Even more no time during the day to do things, but it's so important. And I love you. And I love that you're so passionate about doing this and about sharing your love and your heart with people, especially when you're on the crisis lines, right? Like, because by the time you get to that point, at least for me, like, you're fucking done.
Yeah, I know.
I am really trying not to cuss. I'm trying to be really
I know
good.
you've been, for anybody who's listening and watching, you have to understand something about G. G cannot complete a sentence without the word fuck. And the fact that we have gotten, how many minutes are we right now?
19 minutes.
Epic. Can't even believe that you have gotten to I'm so proud of you. I'm so unbelievably proud of you. It won't last.
It might, but like, your story is so important, because there are probably other people out there that the same thing happened, right? And so finding out later in life, it had to have been incredibly painful and hurtful, and trying to figure out those emotions as an adult.
Yeah. It was a time. So let me tell you that much. It was a time, and I say this in like the most genuine and heartfelt way that I possibly can. I would probably not be here if it was not for my mother. I mean, my mother is the most extraordinary human that I know anyway, aside from everything that she's done to protect me from, all of this. But a lot of people wonder if I ever had any feelings of animosity or if I was angry with her or felt any resentment toward her for keeping the secret. Like she kept the secret for 35 years that my dad died by suicide. And the answer to that question is, oh my God, no, not a second, not a single second of time have I ever been anything but just eternally grateful to her for sparing me. Because look, I mean, I kind of alluded to this a little while ago, and I never really finished the thought that I had always believed that suicide was selfish. It was just my own little belief system that probably started when I was 10 after my cousin passed away. And I don't know where it came from. It didn't come from my parents. It was just like something that just, I just developed on my own. And I just kind of quietly had that belief system until I found out about my father, until I started like digging into kind of the whys behind the psychology behind why people take their life. How do people get that desperate? What is it really all about? And I realized it was just like, and that happened overnight. Like you and I have had this conversation a million times, that I went from believing it was selfish to completely recognizing that mental illness is an illness just like any other illness that needs to be treated and respected and managed in the way you would if you had heart disease or cancer or anything else like that. And I didn't realize that until I had to navigate my own dad's suicide. And then I was like, what an idiot. I'm such an idiot. How would I ever think it was selfish? There's nothing selfish about it whatsoever. And it completely, talk about like mind shift, like blowing your mind. It literally happened overnight. And I was like, oh God, no, it's not that at all. But in that moment, if I had found out when I was 10 years old that it was a suicide, like it was bad enough to know that he was gone forever, my mom just like instinct took over. And she totally mama beared me in that moment and was like, nope, my child is going to be hurting enough for the rest of her life because she just lost her father. I am not layering a suicide on top of that now. And then it became like, now you're going to high school and then college and then you're getting married. Like, what's the point? And then it ended up coming up by accident. But yeah, it's just, it's been a journey. It has definitely been a journey. But then I think about like where I am now and the work that I'm doing now and the connections I've made and the community that I'm a part of and like our relationship and how like absolutely certain I am that I am in the right place at the right time with the right person doing the right thing. Like I've never, ever felt more certain about anything than I do about that, even though you swear constantly like a fucking sailor.
But you know what? Sometimes that's like the only word to use.
I know.
But I am so thankful for you. And, trauma can either bring out the worst in the person or the best in the person. And I think that in our cases, trauma is bringing out the best in us. Mm-hmm. Because we're taking that pain and we turned it into a purpose. Mm-hmm. You and I have said it time and time again. We just want to change the world, change the trajectory. Mm-hmm. And it now more than ever, our message, is clear. And like a lot of people are suffering. Things are crazy right now. So
yeah, that's an understatement.
Being able to open up and talk about this and talk about it freely without any stigma. Because no, I'm not ashamed of my own story, which you guys will hear next week. I had to go through that to get here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so did I. And I'm so unbelievably grateful that I'm in this position that, obviously, do I wish my father was here? Yeah. Do I wish my cousin and my friend was here? Like, of course I do. Not a day goes by that I don't wish that they were still here. At the same time, though, and this is the interesting thing about why, like how grief and joy can exist at the same time. And I'm sure I know you and I'll have this conversation down the line. But in my case, like I always have this undercurrent of sadness that my people are gone and that they died by suicide and it could have been prevented. But, and I hate the word but, and I don't like the word but I'm going to say it anyway. But at the same time, I'm so insanely grateful that what I have gone through is something that I hope other people can connect with and find some pathway to hope through my story or your story. Because you and I have got a lot of lived experience behind us. I mean, you're like 7,000 years old, so you've got like centuries worth of experience.
Wow. Okay,
Let me
like
stop. I'm so sorry.
there's like 6 years difference in us, so you need to stop.
I know. I'm sorry. I had to. I won't ever do it again until the next episode, I swear. I promise. I won't. See, this is good. We're talking about suicide and we're like laughing our asses off. And it's not, this is not to disrespect the subject in any way. This is to show that grief and loss can coexist. They have to coexist. And we have to be able to still recognize what we've been through, the traumatic nature of what we've been through, and also still that there is another side of it, that there is joy to be found and there is hope to be found. You know, we're out here hopefully kind of like blazing the trail for that in some ways. I hope. I kind of see it that way.
I see it that way too. And like I said, you know, in the upcoming episodes, we're just going to dive into like some really amazing topics. And, you know, some of them you'll walk away just scratching your head, and others it'll be like, wow, I never realized. And, you know, so part of it is like an education, the suicide education, and giving you guys some tips and tricks to, like, you know, kind of just figure it out and let you know that you are never, ever, ever, ever.
That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest part of this, because we're not just doing, and we said this in the last episode, we're not just sitting here having conversations about these topics. We're growing a community. We're building a community. Like, we want people to reach out to us. We want people to connect with us, slide into our DMs, send us emails, connect with us in every way that you can. If you have, you know, a story or an experience to share, or a point of view or a tip or something, you know, because not everything works for everybody. And that's the benefit of like you and I just talking about what we've been through. It helps. And the other thing that I think is really important to mention is that, and this is why it makes it so relevant when you talk about like the statistics of suicide, like 700,000 people in the US alone. I'm sorry, that's a lie. I'm lying. It's not. It's
liar, pants on fire.
Sorry, 49,000 people a year will die by suicide in the United States. 700,000 people will die around the world every year because of suicide loss. Now, here's the interesting thing that literally stops me in my tracks every time I hear it. For every one person who dies by suicide, 135 people are affected by that one loss, whether it's like a colleague or it's a family member or it's a friend or someone in the community. 135. So if you do the math, it's like tens of millions of people a year are affected by suicide loss. And here's where this podcast is so important. If you are out there and you're watching us or you're listening to us right now, and you, by some miracle, have not been touched by suicide, either in your, like yourself, with an attempt, or with someone in your life who has made an attempt or has passed away, you will be. You will be. At some point or another, you will be touched by this. And so this is our new pandemic. And you and I are right here to be, we're the Anthony Fauci's of the, is that too much? No, I'm in a good way. In a good way. Right. No, we want to be the voice of, you know, this conversation, to be, you know, a place of comfort, a place of support, a place of strength and hope. And with a little luck and lots of talking, we will be.
I love this. And like I said, tune in next week for my story. And Lisa, thank you so much for sharing yours.
Hey, thanks for holding space. I love you a lot.
I love you too. Thanks for joining us on The Survivors. Remember, no matter how tough things feel, you are enough, and the world needs you just the way you are. You're not alone in this journey. There's a community here, and every step forward counts. We're so grateful you took the time to listen, and we hope you'll take one day at a time. Just know there's always more light ahead.
Thanks for being here, friends. Just remember, help is out there in so many different places. So if you or someone you know is struggling, please call 988 and a trained crisis counselor like me will be there to help. You can also find an inclusive and comprehensive directory of mental health resources, tools, and content at the HelpHUB.co. Just remember that help is always just a call or a click away. We'll catch you next week. In the meantime, keep surviving.